Cup Series race. Here are your hosts, Kevin Batstone, NASCAR Sky, and Jeff Davis.
Welcome back, race fans, to another great episode of Mash the Gas podcast. I'm Jeff Davis. Joining me shortly is Kevin Batstone and Miss NASCAR Sky. We're here to cover the Würth 400 from Texas Motor Speedway. What a race it was. And Sky, hey, who mashed the gas this week?
Got to give it to sport's most popular driver. Very popular win for a track that's trying to gain some popularity back. So I'm sure that win definitely helps. But yeah, Chase Elliott, I mean, he's been really consistent all year, like quiet consistent. So it's good to see him get, a second win on the season. He was in such a funk for so long. I don't know. It's just good to see him kind of get back together and that whole 9 team start getting some wins.
Great for the sport. Great for those guys. I mean, Chase now second win of the year, won Martinsville earlier. Those guys are kind of clicking. I mean, we talked about Hendrick Motorsports struggling a little bit, Chevy struggling as a whole. Great day for Alex Bowman. I mean, I did not see Alex Bowman bringing this thing home with a top 5, but Chase just, Texas, Kansas, he kind of has an act for these tracks and was just faster. I mean, he ran the fastest lap of the race with a 28.89, led 87 laps, held off Denny Hamlin on multiple restarts, made great pit stops, was just all around a great race for those guys, and they're definitely making a good run here in the points, Jeff.
Yeah, Hendrick really did pull it off this weekend. I mean, other than Kyle Larson, getting spun out there, they did a great job, and it was really cool to see Chase out there in victory lane. Great driver. Like I said, NASCAR's most popular driver, and I know we were kind of talking about it. And like I said, one of our fans kind of reached out to us before the race. His name is Joey Fitzpatrick. Sky is from your neck of the woods down in Daytona, and he was wondering, okay, hey, I wonder if Carson Hocevar, with all the traction that he's getting and how positive everyone is, does he have a chance of maybe dethroning him for the most popular driver of the year? Now it's kind of tough maybe after this win that the 9 got, and like Kevin said, he won Martinsville, so he's only the second one to have multiple wins this year. But he's got a good point. And the 77, he ran quite a few really, really good laps. He just could not pull it off.
I think I definitely agree that if anyone could dethrone Chase Elliott, it would definitely be Carson Hocevar. And I think it's because not only is he getting such a good fan backing right now, but he also has such a social media presence, which Chase Elliott doesn't have. And social media is so powerful. I mean, he's always doing live streams we've talked about. He makes all these videos. I think that if he put enough time and energy into it, he could probably rally enough social media people, even people who probably don't watch NASCAR fully, get them to vote. And I think that, he would have a really strong chance just based off his social media presence alone to beat Chase Elliott. I think that that's something that, these older drivers, they don't do as much. But social media, it's super powerful.
I agree. And it's crazy we're even saying that Chase Elliott is considered an older driver now, but he is. And I do think that if anybody's going to beat the 9, it would be Carson Hocevar, just based on what we're seeing at the racetrack. I mean, tons of 77 shirts, even before his Talladega win. That Talladega win got him a whole bunch of new fans. He goes out and grabs the pole in Texas, wins the truck race. The kid's on fire for sure. He's great to his fans, to his sponsors, good for the sport. I think there's a really good chance. I wonder if you can bet on that on Kashi or whatever that app is, who could take it, who could dethrone Chase Elliott. I think the 77 is definitely has a shot at it, Jeff.
Yeah, like you mentioned, winning the truck race and winning Talladega. I mean, that's like, in a way, kind of like back-to-back wins. He didn't win the Cup Series, but he got the pole on there. I mean, he is driving very, very solid. Winning that truck race, I thought was really damn cool. He did it again, great burnout. So Carson Hocevar, I think he's really got a good chance. He just didn't get quite the finish he needed in Texas. He still got a top 10, so I think he finished P7. The 77 finished in P7. But overall, it was a really good race. A lot of the drivers had problems coming out of turn 4. It seemed like, that's always the turn where drivers will spin out. Really unfortunate right at the beginning of the race when old Seabell got clipped by the 34. He tried to avoid it, and that totally ruined his day. I mean, it put him up in the wall and tore that car up. So it's kind of sad to see Seabell. He's had a rough last 5 races. He's finished out of the top 15 4 times. So he's going through a little bit of a rough spell, you guys.
He definitely is, but good thing for him is that he is good at road courses. I mean, I'd say has a strong chance at a strong finish over at Watkins Glen. So hopefully he can just keep the morale up. It is unfortunate for him because he is such a good driver. And I feel like a lot of the stuff that's been happening to him hasn't really been his fault. I will say though, pit road was such a mess. And I feel like we've been talking about that so much this year, different drivers, but I feel like just in general, I mean, and it's a lot of drivers that you don't expect. Like, I would like to see a stat of just like who's had the most penalties because I'm almost convinced that Denny Hamlin would be up there. I feel like he's always making little mistakes. Kyle Busch, too, all these old drivers. It's just so interesting. It seems like there's so many different components with NASCAR right now, so many different moving parts that maybe some people are not focusing on the fundamental things, like the little things that, they're overlooking all the pit road discipline. But it's definitely showing up this entire season, honestly.
Yeah, it was absolute chaos. I mean, I think that was one of the most chaotic stretches of pit road I've ever seen. We had a lot of different strategies playing out there, 2 tires, 4 tires, fuel only, just the way that the stage was falling there. But I mean, all in that same sequence, we saw Chase Briscoe and Kyle Larson get into it. We saw Ryan Blaney try to take off in the wrong gear. Joey Logano goes out and gets himself a DNF on pit road, Sky. I mean, just completely plowed into the back of the 41. Just a crazy scenario as he was pulling out, grabs second gear, plows into the 41, ends up with a DNF from pit road.
What's even worse about that whole thing is who spun in front of, I don't remember, William Byron or whatever, and he just barely missed Byron, like didn't wreck the car, and then goes on pit road and wrecks it. I couldn't even get mad or upset because I was just like, this is so Logano. And then they showed that stat on TV that showed all his different finishes, and it's just like up, down, up, down, up, down. I mean, that is just the life of a Logano fan, I'll tell you that.
Well, it was definitely interesting on pit road. Usually we see a lot of mistakes, like a front tire changer or, a jack man having a problem or getting a lug off or on. But yeah, this time on pit road, it was mayhem. I mean, it was drivers running into each other left and right. I mean, Chase Briscoe definitely got the bad end of the stick when Kyle Larson, pulled in right in front of him and he had to back up, kind of ruined his day a little bit. And then Larson wound up spinning out anyway. But yeah, it was an interesting pit road situation. It was fun. I was telling Kevin earlier, it was nice, even though I got to the race a little bit late. Got up there, got up in the suites, walked in the one foot in, and our favorite bartender Taylor was already cracking me open a bud. Looked at it and said, "Hey, where's your buddy?" And I said, "We were in Kansas 2 weeks ago." So Kevin, she said to tell you hello, but super sweet gal up there, and it was fun. So. I met a lot of cool people. We've got a guest coming on probably next week. Her name's Lauren. Her daughter is married to Todd Gilliland, and she's also a part-time spotter for Ricky Stenhouse. So she does the track like Watkins Glen and Sonoma. So being that we got Watkins Glen coming up next week, we might have her on air just to kind of chat about it, what she saw and how it is to be up there on the pit or up there on the stands, doing spotting. So I'm looking forward to next week. But yeah, overall, I thought it was a really good race. And you guys, how packed were those stands? I mean, I saw it from upstairs, and from what I saw on some TV clips, the stands are just jam packed.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of the best attendance that Texas has had in over 15 years. Last year was the same. It's definitely swung back the other way since we started Mash the Gas. Texas was at an all-time low. We watched it lose a race. They gave it an all-star race. They pulled that, went to one race a year, struggled, and now Texas is kind of on the rebound. I feel like after the reconfiguration there in turns 1 and 2, it was kind of conveyor belt racetrack for a bit. It's taken character. It's bumpy. It's always windy. Texas is a very difficult mile and a half. It just does not drive like Las Vegas or Kansas or Charlotte or some of these other mile and a halves. It's got these unique characteristics, and we always see the bumps in turns 3 and 4 getting these guys. We even saw it in turn 2. I mean, Bubba Wallace goes out there and wrecks on turn 2 in practice. Kyle Larson does the exact same thing in the race. So really difficult racetrack, fighting loose, tight conditions. We saw Kyle Busch, of course, have one of his better runs of the season since Atlanta earlier this year. Crew chief change there, and then Kyle just got a little pissy towards the end of the race and decided to just clean out the 42 of John Hunter Nemechek. Not sure if that's worthy of a penalty or not, Sky.
I didn't like it for sure, and it's just like I like angry Kyle Busch, and I think that angry Kyle Busch brings a lot to the sport. It's like a different flavor, and and fans tend to like it, but I think I'm always like safety first, and you never want to injure anybody. And I don't think that whatever happened before was even enough to warrant that, especially where it was at in the race and what position he was in and everything. It seemed like such a risky, dumb thing to do. I don't know if NASCAR will penalize it. I wouldn't be upset if they did. I'm also not sure I would be upset if they didn't. But maybe just I'd say another stern talking to. But we're saying this about grown men, so I really don't know what to do with it.
I loved how you put that, the angry Kyle Busch. I love it. Yeah, he was kind of pissed off on the radio. I know he was having problems with his tires. He said that he just couldn't get them straight, and he was bitching to the crew chief, and it was an uncalled for situation. So yeah, we'll have to see what NASCAR does. But I'll tell you, the one driver that really surprised me that we normally do not see up front, Corey Heim. He led. I mean, other than Chase Elliott, he was second most laps. He led 69 laps, and it was just in awe. Like everyone up, we were talking about him. Like Corey Heim, man, he's up there and he's killing it. He's crushing it. And I know he came down right at the end of stage 2. I think it was probably because he was out of gas, and then he just couldn't kind of get back from there.
Yeah, it was interesting to see those guys on a different pit strategy. They were kind of running it down towards the end. They were going to try to make it to the end of the stage, couldn't, end up having to pit, cycled through. But what was interesting is the fact that they were able to have speed, lead 69 laps, be out front. I mean, those 2311 Toyotas are fast. Riley Herbst comes home P11. He was up in the top 10 for most of the day. Bubba Wallace came from the back. Obviously Tyler Reddick, up and down, gets a decent finish out of it. Had we've got another caution there, maybe we had a run on it, being that he was the first guy in 4 tires. But all in all, those 2311 Toyotas definitely show speed. I was shocked that, a Hendrick Chevy went out there and dominated this race as much as they did. My pick last week to win was Denny Hamlin, who led 21 laps. Just came up a little bit short, just didn't have enough to get around the 9, but definitely was a strong top 5 car all day. Chris Buescher, top 5 for his home track, going to a place where he's won before. But again, shout out to Alex Bowman. I mean, super difficult racetrack to come in and get a top 3, especially when your teammate spins out, your other teammate wrecks. Really good day for the 48.
I agree. And that's exactly what we need to see out of him. Maybe you can't go out and win races, but you've got to prove that you're worthy of the 48 and that you deserve to stay and continue fighting for it. And so far, I mean, the first few weeks, it was kind of like up and down, but I don't know, the last two weeks at least, I think that he's been pretty good, pretty consistent in showing that, he can keep up with his teammates. So it is just a really good finish for him. And RFK in general, they are definitely, I can't even say that I would put Penske as the running 4 team, just because Blaney's really the only guy you can count on out of the Penske camp. But I mean, yeah, we mentioned Chris Buescher. He got a top 5, and then 13th, 14th was Keselowski and Priest. So, and they're doing really well in the standings as well. I think all of them are in the playoff, or my gosh, the playoffs, the chase at the moment. So I don't know, they got something working over there. And I know I keep picking these drivers, and they haven't won yet, but one of those 3, they're knocking. They're going to get it very, very, very soon.
Yeah, Chris Buescher, I think is just crushing it. He finished P5 in this race, bumped him up 2 spots in the in the chase. So he's 181 points behind, but these drivers are getting caught up with Reddick a little bit. I mean, Denny Hamlin's still in second. He's down 109 points, but Chase Elliott actually bumped Ryan Blaney down a spot, and Chase Elliott moved up with his win, so he's only 117 points behind in the standings. So we're seeing some a lot of stuff up and down with some of these drivers. But yeah, I think RFK is doing a great job. Chris Buescher, I'm glad, like I said, he's grew up just down the road from me and Prosper, and really nice guy. When we met him in Kansas, he was super cool, and he's like, yeah, what a small world, and he was really nice. So it was cool to see him up there and, getting that top 5 and actually being in 5th place in the standings. So I think we're going to see a little bit more out of those Fords, but you're right. Penske's got some catching up to do a little bit. We thought they were going to be a little more dominant so far this year, but they just haven't been what we're used to seeing.
Yeah, and it's still early enough where they can right the ship. I just, with this new chase format, we've talked about it all year already. Joey Logano sitting in P17 in points, right outside of the chase behind Chase Briscoe, 291 points back from our leader, Tyler Reddick. Now, something that's never happened in NASCAR points history is somebody leads the entire season in points. We've never seen this happen ever. Tyler Reddick's in position to do it. 109-point advantage over Denny Hamlin. And he doesn't even need to necessarily go out and continue to win races. He can just click off top tens and I think maintain this. How possible do you think it is that Tyler Reddick becomes the first NASCAR driver to lead from Daytona to Homestead and win the championship?
I don't think it's likely. I think it's so, and it's not even on him necessarily, but you go through like 2 or 3 races where you're getting DNFs because somebody else is wrecking, doing something dumb, and you're getting caught up in it. And while you're getting those DNFs, Denny Hamlin's winning all 3 of those races. To me, and Denny is just such a veteran. He's been so good to have him. I say he's one of the best drivers this season, if not the best. I know that he said that Ryan Blaney on his podcast is probably the best, but Denny Hamlin, I mean, he's always consistent. It's almost hard to count him out usually. So I think at some point in the season, Denny Hamlin will end up dethroning his driver for a little while.
He made a good point about, he's going to get, someone wrecks into him, just catches his nose or his tail, spins him out. And that's all it takes. You have a couple DNFs and Denny Hamlin's right there in P1. So it'll be interesting because I think Hamlin is obviously carrying the Toyota camp. All three of us thought that it was going to be a Toyota driver that was going to win this race. I thought it was really cool to see, Chase Elliott. I mean, it was great. We used to call him the kid from Dawsonville, but like Kevin mentioned a minute ago, he's a veteran of the sport now. He's not a kid. He's a grown man and running really, really well. And we wanted to see that out of him. So I think a lot of the fans are really stoked to see that here in Texas. To Kevin's point, I don't. Tyler Reddick might be able to do it, but he would just have to keep his nose clean and through the rest of the season, make sure he's getting points in every stage when possible, and maybe even getting another win or two. But Hamlin is slowly catching up. So, there's a possibility that Hamlin's going to get in there. I think Sky's right. I think it might go back and forth, actually. Hamlin might get up there in first place, and then Tyler Reddick win a race, and then he's going to be back on top too. So those are two of the main contenders right now that we're looking at. We got a lot of racing left in the season, so we're just going to have to see what happens.
Yeah, it's just so tough to predict. I mean, 109-point lead over second is massive when you consider second to third, 109 to minus 117, 155, 181, 193 for the top six, which realistically we've been saying all year. I think you're going to have to be in the top six to have a realistic shot at winning the chase. But you look at Denny Hamlin, he's led 624 laps on this season to Tyler Reddick's 201. Denny Hamlin has cranked out 91 stage points to Tyler Reddick's 87. So once again, that just shows you that those 5 wins and those 15 extra bonus points certainly do cushion that. I think if it's going to happen, Sky, Denny's going to have to start winning multiple races, or whoever. Maybe Chase goes on a run. Maybe Ryan Blaney heats up. But somebody's going to have to win 4 or 5 races to dethrone Tyler Reddick from the top spot on the points. I just don't see any other way for them to do it.
I mean, it's definitely possible. I feel like none of us thought, the 45 was going to go out and win. How many did he win in a row? 4, 3, 4 in a row, 5 in a row, whatever he won in a row.
4 in a row.
Like, nobody thought he was going to do that. You know what? I'm looking at 5th place Chris Buescher. He's going to go out and he's going to win a couple in a row, and he's going to dethrone everybody is what I'm thinking.
I'd love to see it. That'd be great for him, And we were talking about Bowman, it was great to see him get a P3. I was kind of surprised, when William Byron got spun out, and he still managed to get a top 10, P8 there. So Hendrick really did surprise me from what I thought was actually going to happen. And one of the other things I thought was kind of interesting was Eric Jones got his first stage win in his entire career. He's raced 332 races. So, him winning stage 1, good for him. It's about time for him. But then, Chase Elliott winning stage 2, getting those extra points. And I think that's what's putting him up there. So overall, I thought it was a really good day.
Yeah, I think Texas delivered for sure. I mean, we knew coming into this, there was a stat earlier this week that the average number of cautions for the racetracks that we had been to leading into Texas were about 2 to 4. Not including stage breaks, 2 to 4 cautions for cause of cautions. Texas averaged 12 to 14 over the last few years since we've gone into this next gen car. And it backed it up once again. I don't think we hit 14 cautions, but we certainly had the same thing that we've been seeing, spinning off turn 4. The pit road mayhem was what it was. But, Kyle Larson wrecking all by himself in turn 2. Bubba Wallace did the same thing in practice. I mean, you just don't really see those one-off situations at a lot of these other mile and a halves. And so I think that's what makes Texas very unique, like I was saying earlier, versus a Charlotte, which we'll be at in a couple weeks, or Kansas, where we were, Las Vegas. All these mile and a halves are they're not so much cookie cutter anymore. And I'm really curious to see what happens when we get to Chicagoland. I'm excited that we're returning to this mile and a half. We had a tire test there about a week and a half ago. We've moved on from the Chicago street course. We're going to have another mile and a half back in Joliet, Illinois. And I think that we can continue to build on where these guys stack up in the mile and a halves. Are the Chevys now going to be the front running favorite when we get back to a mile and a half? Or are these TRDs and these Toyota racing cars still the favorite?
I ultimately think that Toyota, just in general, is probably like 2 steps ahead of Chevy at this point, and I think Ford might be a little bit further behind. I mean, I don't know. RFK got something working there, but Toyota is just like leaps and bounds better than everybody else right now on a multitude of different tracks, and it's hard to kind of bet against any Toyota driver at the moment. Even like we talked about Christopher Bell and the troubles he's facing, but I still feel like he's probably going to be one of the drivers in the running, definitely towards the end of the year, that we're mentioning for the championship. So Toyota is just, I don't know, they're just so much better than everyone else right now.
Well, one thing that I think is interesting about Toyota is in the last like 6 years, the body styles of the cars, Ford and Chevy have both kind of changed up their body styles just a little bit. Toyota is the only one in the last 6 years has not changed the shape or style of the body of the car. The Toyotas are running on a heater. Unfortunately, they did not have a really good race with Joe Gibbs this weekend. Denny Hamlin was the only one in the top 10, getting his P2, because Chase Briscoe got a P23. Ty Gibbs, he got spun out, finished P36, and then Seabell, like I said, he finished P38. So Toyota in general, I think, is doing great, but it was not a good weekend for Joe Gibbs Racing.
No, it certainly wasn't. I mean, like you said, other than Denny, and those guys just got caught up in, some of the mess. I mean, I would have been curious to see what would have happened, had Todd Gilliland not spun off before Seabell didn't get collected. Because I know that was Sky's pick to win the race last week. Did the 20 have something to go up and compete with the 9? It would have been interesting to see how that played out. Seabell certainly had the confidence, in that interview with Jamie Little. He said, look, we're bringing fast race cars. I feel good. With our chances, we just need to put the whole race together. I mean, what else could he have done? He dove all the way down to the grass to try to avoid the 34, just wrong place, wrong time, a little bit snake bit, as they say. And then, as far as the Chevys go, we heard Jeff Gordon say in Victory Lane, he goes, we know that we're just a touch behind on where we need to be. And, they were asking Jeff, well, what did the 9 have that the 5 didn't? Because Larson just had no speed. Sure, he qualified decent in the top 15, but then just dropped like a rock, wrecked. What was so different? And oh, by the way, he won the O'Reilly Auto Parts race on Saturday, so he had a little bit extra seat time. And then we get there Sunday, and the 5 just has no speed and goes out and wrecks all by himself. So HMS definitely has something that's working, it seems like, for about half the organization, but the other half, they kind of have to go back to the R&D center, take a look at the SMT data, reset, get ready to go here at a road course, Watkins Glen, which Chase Elliott at one time was dominant in, but we have yet to see Chase win in the next gen.
Yeah, and speaking of Watkins Glen, this is one of the tracks that I'm very curious to see how Connor Zilic does on. I'm not sure I would bet him to win necessarily, and he hasn't really impressed me too much this season, which I hate, not trying to put too much on him. I mean, he is a rookie. You have to learn, and on top of that, he's a very, very young rookie. But I think that this will be a good track for him, and I'm interested to see. It all just really comes down to, I guess, Trackhouse in general. They've been lacking speed. The beginning of the year, I felt like they had something, especially with Ross Chastain. But I mean, we've mentioned it a few times. It is just almost miserable, that entire camp at the moment. So I'm hoping they bring something good enough that I just really want to see what Connor Zilic can do, especially on a track like that.
I agree. I mean, we saw him run and lead laps in O'Reilly again. I mean, that's obviously the series is familiar with, but we look at Trackhouse as a whole, as we've said, and SVG's has kind of carried at points wise. Ross Chastain was on his way, Jeff, to having a good day in Texas until he got that late race speeding penalty. So just again, another mistake by a driver that completely kills his day. He was going to come home with a top 10, no doubt about it, and end up finishing P26. So, I think Trackhouse, in comparison to the rest of the Chevys are struggling a little bit. But we are heading to a place like Sky mentioned, Connor Zilic, SVG. No question these guys are going to be favorites coming into this. So it's going to be interesting to see as the season continues on, where does Trackhouse stack up? Do they continue to improve or do they continue to slide down the points?
It's going to be an interesting race next weekend. I mean, there's a lot of drivers. I think that we might not see. Well, we know our road course picks usually, so I think there's going to be a lot of fun next weekend at Watkins Glen. But as far as drivers, Daniel Suarez, finishing P6 this weekend, he's got really good road course. I mean, there's a chance he could come out there next week and win out at Watkins Glen. But I'm going to kind of keep my eye on Chris Buescher. I think he's running hot right now, and he's great at the road courses too. So I don't know. I think I might be going with him for next week, guys.
Jeff, how could you do that to me, bro?
You did it to me last week.
Okay, you know what? It's fair. It's honestly good that you took him, only because I've been picking RFK a lot. Maybe that's going to deter me. I might go back to Toyota or something, but I'll definitely need a minute to think on it. I love Watkins Glen, though. I feel like it's such, I don't know, it's just such a nostalgic track for me. I remember growing up and always sitting and watching it. I always loved it because it was different. We didn't run a lot of different things when I was growing up. It was usually just turning left all the time. So it was nice when we got to, Sonoma and Watkins Glen. Mark Martin was always good there, or at least the times I remember. So I just have a special place in my heart for Watkins Glen. So I'm going to have to, I don't know, Kevin, I guess I'm going to need a minute to decide now who I'm going to pick next week.
Yeah, I've been crunching the numbers. I mean, we look back last year, we know SVG got the win. I think what's going to be interesting about Watkins Glen this time of year, guys, is that in years past, we ran it in August and September. So this will be the earliest. We've kind of pushed it back into May. I don't necessarily think that's going to change the outcome of the race, but I just kind of find that interesting, the time of year we are running Watkins Glen this go around. Jeff took Chris Buescher, who won this race 2 years ago. SVG came runner-up. Carson Hocevar, Chastain, and Zane Smith were in the top 5. Last year, we saw SVG, Christopher Bell, Chris Buescher, Byron, and Briscoe round out the top 5. So, a lot of our usual suspects, our road course ringers. I think if we're talking fantasy, you probably want to throw AJ Allmendinger in there. Of course, SVG. The obvious pick, I know Sky's going to give me gripe, would be to take SVG, but I'm not going to do it this time. I'm not going to take him. Even though I do think he's going to win, my intuition is telling me to go SVG. I'm going to go Tyler Reddick. And the reason I'm going to go Reddick is because he won COTA. He's good on the road courses. He has speed. These guys are lights out fast. I'm going to go Tyler Reddick for Watkins Glen.
Yeah, that's a great pick too. And one thing the drivers are going to have to get used to, we're always used to, go fast, turn left. Like Sky mentioned, now we're going to be turning right and left. But the other big kicker is we're running in the opposite direction. So the pit crews are going to have to really practice about, pitting the opposite direction than we normally do. So, hopefully we won't see a lot of mistakes on pit road. If it's anything like Texas, and we don't want the drivers making all the mistakes. And we don't want to see anyone making mistakes, but this is always one of those tracks where the pit crews really have to concentrate, because you just don't do it. There's only a couple times we do this a year.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, pit road has just, hopefully after they've seen what happened this past weekend, they all kind of are like, all right, take a breather, get it together. I mean, everyone's just making fundamental mistakes, like little mistakes that you don't need to make, especially the drivers, with the speeding penalties. I mean, stuff like that, you can't have that. I think that helped. You picking Tyler Reddick narrowed it down, because I was going to go with the 20 again, because I was a little bit panicking and I'm like, I don't know who to pick. But I think I'm going to go back on what I said earlier in the episode. So sorry, I guess NASCAR Sky is a little bit of a liar. But I'm going to go with Connor Zilic, just because I like to be different and choose different. I'm not going to go Shane Gisbergen, and I think, you know what? Screw it. Connor Zilic is going to get his first win.
It's a good pick. I mean, here's the deal. We didn't get to see what Connor Zilic was going to do in a Cup car there last year because, well, during the O'Reilly Auto Parts race, he fell off the car and snapped his clavicle. So we weren't able to see him race at Watkins Glen last year. So that's a good pick. Just not knowing what we're going to see out of Zilic in this car in the Cup Series at Watkins Glen. I think we can definitely all agree that SVG will be in the top 5. He's going to be a contender. Chris Buescher, I think, is a great pick. Reddick, I kind of went out on a limb there just because he won COTA. He's the only, so far that's our only road course this year. He's got momentum. He's hot everywhere. SVG is the obvious pick. He's going in my fantasy lineup, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to throw him in there as well, probably. I don't like picking the same things you do. It seems to happen more often than not. We get a lot of the same drivers But overall, my picks this week just didn't pan out. And I know everything's bigger in Texas, except for the cell service at TMS. The cell service is absolutely terrible. I couldn't switch my driver out of the garage. Not like it would have mattered much anyway. Because I had Seabell and Larson in there, and both of them, I feel like I just wasted a pick on them. But I thought this was going to be a good track for both of them. So unfortunately, it wasn't. But next week, Tyler Reddick, he could definitely win this race.
Off to upstate New York, beautiful part of the country, great racetrack, a lot of history up there, like Sky mentioned. One of my favorite road courses for sure. Just so much character, so many memories there. I mean, one of my favorites was Marcus Ambrose and Brad Keselowski going at it back in 2012.
Love it.
I mean, that's definitely a standout moment. SVG getting his wins there, Chase Elliott dominating there, Jeff Gordon dominating there, Tony Stewart. I mean, just so many great memories, so many great wins at this road course. Been a staple of our sport for a long, long time. So excited to get up there, do some right and left turning, for all the haters that say all we do is go fast and turn left. Well, we're turning right this weekend, and that's always fun. And then we get to look ahead to the All-Star race in Dover the week after Watkins Glen. So that's going to be interesting. First time bringing the All-Star race there. I don't know how good that crowd's going to be. I think that's going to be very interesting. So next Monday night, we'll break down the All-Star format, get you ready for that. A little bit of the All-Star break before the Coke 600. And we're turning right and left, guys. Let's go. We're going upstate New York. We're back next Monday night to break down all of the action from Watkins Glen, the Go Bowling at the Glen, of course, longtime running sponsor there. Be sure to follow us at Mash the Gas across the board, at NASCAR Sky over there if you want to get in touch with her. And we're going road course racing, y'all. And until then,
Mash the gas.